Joining me to talk about this in more detail is Richard Pater, Director of the Britain-Israel Communications and Research Centre. Thanks for joining us, Richard. You're over there in Jerusalem. What is the... I always say I hate this question, but I think it's relevant now. You're in Jerusalem. You're in the heart of a region that is on a knife edge. What is the atmosphere like there?
Thank you for having me. The atmosphere here is pretty somber. People are still grieving. There are still funerals going on here, and as in the Jewish custom of kind of then the days of mourning for the families. So that's all going on. Whilst at the same time, Israelis are showing a stoicism and a fortitude to just get on with it now, because we understand that this is sadly just the beginning. What we saw on October the 7th kind of shook Israel to its core. There's never been an attack like that, but Israelis are coming to terms with that and understanding that the day after, the Hamas can no longer be able to threaten Israel as it has done.
Let me ask you this. Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State from America, has been over there in deep talks with Benjamin Netanyahu. We've seen lots of footage of them around committee tables, deep in discussions. We know Joe Biden's on his way to the Middle East tomorrow. And at the weekend, we thought that the imminent Israeli invasion of Gaza would happen. We were told the weather held it off. Netanyahu kept saying, it's coming, next stage, you know, here we go, next stage, it's about to happen. It still hasn't happened, Richard. Is it the Americans holding Israel back? Are they urging restraint? And is Mr. Netanyahu listening?
No, I don't think so. I don't think this is, I mean, we can talk about afterwards what the Americans' role here is, but when it comes to the potential for a ground operation, I think that would be based purely on operational considerations on the Israeli side. They've decided for now that, first of all, they've created a national unity emergency government with some more pragmatists and moderates coming in from the center of Israeli politics. The two members that have entered the inner war cabinet are both former IDF chief of staff, so they have a wealth of experience and understanding of what a battle with Hamas involves. And at the moment, they've restricted it to quite a vociferous air campaign targeting Hamas military infrastructure. And they're building a plan. They're basing it, first of all, on intelligence, because what we understand from previous rounds, although this is on a different level of magnitude, previous rounds have taught the Israelis that Hamas bury themselves deep underground. There is a labyrinth of tunnels there that operate under people's homes and houses and other residential areas deliberately to prevent Israel from attacking. And as we know now, I mean, still this morning, we've seen constant rocket fire, that however much the Israeli army are hitting Hamas targets from the sky, they're still able to fire rockets. I had to take my family down into a shelter yesterday here in Jerusalem. So there is still that duality ongoing.
In your mind, as someone on the scene, is there any doubt that there will be a massive Israeli invasion happening fairly soon? As I say, we've been on a knife edge over here, thinking it was imminent any second. Mr. Netanyahu kind of indicated, you know, any moment now, here we come. But it still hasn't happened. In your mind, Richard, it will definitely happen, and reasonably soon?
I mean, it's very difficult to speculate that. I'm obviously not privy to those military discussions and strategic conversations. I would say that, first of all, unlike an operation which is launched at the initiative of an army, this is essentially a response to that, to the brutal massacres. So Israel is taking their time. They're assessing the intelligence. They're making sure that operational plans are in place for the ground forces. We don't know yet what scale it will be to go in. We don't know if it will be to target that labyrinth of tunnels that I mentioned, or whether there will be some audacious attempt to rescue some of the hostages that are still there. This is kind of open speculation, and I suggest we just wait and see.
It is important, though, is it not, that Israel is seen to avenge what happened to it 9 days ago. I mean, Israel was the victim To say war crimes is the understatement of the century. These were grotesque atrocities. You know, grandmothers raped,
Absolutely.
babies beheaded, people executed on their doorstep. It is important that Israel avenges what happens to its people and that they are seen to do so. Would you agree with that?
I'm not sure avenge is the right term. I think what really they want to, the objectives of this operation will be to prevent Hamas from ever doing it again. And so that may well involve a ground incursion, but it will be to target systematically the military infrastructure that Hamas have, whether it's kind of their ability to fire rockets, their weapons making factories, their command and control centers, their observation centers, the military leadership themselves. So that's what it's about. It's about preventing future attacks. I do think as well that, as you've implied, Israel has other enemies around the region, and they are all watching as well. And so there is a sense of sending a signal that the other sides shouldn't be brought into this. We've seen, as you're, I'm sure, aware, small-scale attacks from Hezbollah and from Lebanon. This morning, there was an anti-rocket missile fired at a civilian vehicle that has injured 2 people in the city of Metula, and the IDF just declared that a closed military zone. We saw that over the weekend as well, that whilst the Hezbollah was starting, first of all, to target military sites, this is the second civilian target that they've now struck. This is under the threshold of war with them, and Israel is careful to return fire at the moment to the source of the fire and not exasperate things further. But Hezbollah's potential arsenal are a different scale of magnitude to Hamas, and that's obviously high up in the concerns. And that's, I think, what the Americans are here to be discussing, to send a message to Iran and to Hezbollah that they shouldn't get involved.
Well, attrition in the Middle East surrounding Israel is something, sadly, we've had to get used to. I mean, the firing of rockets by Hezbollah and Hamas is a regular event, unbelievably, that people just see as part of their way of life there. So this is, attrition between the various sides is not new. What, to you, Richard, feels different about this situation?
So, I mean, listen, since Hamas took over the Gaza Strip 17 years ago, we've had 4 or 5 different rounds of fighting. But what we saw, the scale of the attack, the barbarity of the attack on October the 7th, has really kind of put all the other small rounds of conflict into proportion, that this is of a far huger scale of magnitude. And therefore, unlike reaching a modus vivendi where Hamas are temporarily put off, this is why the Israeli public are backing the government to go far more assertively, far stronger, and to end the capacity of Hamas rule there.
Indeed. And when Joe Biden comes tomorrow, do you think that the mere fact that he's on his way will probably mean that Israel will not invade Gaza until the American president is either on the scene or has left?
We can speculate that. I mean, my sense is that the operational plans are going on in tandem, in parallel to any visit even by the presidents of the US. And I think the US concern and the moving of their aircraft carriers off the coast of Israel is much more a signal to Iran and Hezbollah. To quote Israel's former prime minister, the Israeli assessment sees the Iranian octopus kind of operating various levers within the region. We know, although they are Persians, non-Arabs, they're in control of 4 Arab capitals, in Sana'a in Yemen, in Baghdad, in Damascus, and in Beirut. They have that influence. This, over the last year or so, they've been trying to increase their exposure and influence over the Palestinian arena as well, both in Gaza and the West Bank. And if you look at Gaza, I mean, obviously Israel, up until last week, kept open humanitarian aid and goods coming in and out. And that's clearly where it was exposed that all these weapons that were smuggled in came from somewhere. So it's clearly the Iranian influence on this sector which is causing such devastation and terror.
Last question, Richard. This was the worst massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust. try to sum up what the mood of the Israeli people is. I mean, without wishing to preempt your answer, I would imagine it's a mixture of grief and fury. Try to sum up how you're feeling, how your fellow countrymen are feeling.
So, as I said at the beginning, absolutely the first reaction is shock and grief. I know personally families that were affected, families that are still missing their kids because Hamas also not only brutally massacred and butchered people in their homes, but also have taken up to over 200 hostages, and so that remains a key issue. The issue of that sensitivity is real and visceral for the Israeli public. And there's so much love and concern for those families to give them the protection and hopefully to find some form of relief for them soon. But at the same time, as I said, kind of this country is used to conflict and understands that when the call comes, people must turn up. And there's been, I've heard quoted kind of when the army called up over 300,000 reserves, and they can confirming in some units 130% attendance, i.e. even people that weren't called up are volunteering and want to stand up and serve. In other places around the country, there are voluntary networks of people who are supplying kind of the basic necessities for the people in the south that have also had to leave their homes and supplying kind of the basic of care for them. And so there are lots of other humanitarian and civilian efforts within the non-military efforts to support the country at this time. And I'd just like to say we also appreciate the support from outside the world as well. I think not only the US, but the British government has been very supportive. We saw a very important visit by Foreign Secretary Cleverly last week. These things matter. We've got the other European leaders who are also expected to come in this week. And Israel stands shoulder to shoulder with their democratic allies to fight against this brutal ISIS-type terror.
Well said, Richard. Great to talk to you. Thank you very much, Richard Pater there in Jerusalem. You are watching the Independent Republic of Mike Graham with me, Kevin O'Sullivan.